So hello, welcome, and namaste. I'm actually very grateful that all of you came to this, I would call it momentous occasion, where we have an opportunity to really go deep into our spiritual practice and attune to that infinite light that I was speaking of. To attune to the reality that you are with a capital R. When a being reaches such a state, kind of pops into enlightenment, it's said that all the angels in heaven are clapping and showering flowers on earth. Such a great being. They would call that as like a paramahansa, a great soul. A Buddha was such a being. And he strove with an intensity to find his truth and renounced everything, even his own family, to go out and seek, because he was dissatisfied with life as it was in the palace. He was going to be a king, a great emperor. And he left it all. Why would he do that? Because the real purpose of life is finding your soul. I kind of joke about it, we all have like a bucket list. How many things are on your bucket list? Do you know how you figure that out? They're uncountable, that bucket list. You just look at your mind, even now, and throughout the day. What is it thinking about? Mind is simply a desire-making machine. Those are all the lists on the bucket. So what, like maybe 10,000 thoughts during the day? So it shouldn't even be just one bucket, like so many buckets. How many things are we thinking about all day? The true illumined being has no thought. The mind is, in a way, it's dead. So what's speaking through that great being, or that Paramahansa, is pure truth, pure being. It's not the human mind that's speaking through it. It's extraordinary to be in the company of such beings. They're like a wind-up toy, a divine windsock. A great mystery. You can't put your finger on what they are. They're like endless space, pure grace, illumination. And that's why I lit a candle for Swami Purna and got some flowers to honor him, because he is such a being, a descending being, which in itself maybe happens once in age. Such beings come down onto earth, one of them being Buddha. I mentioned Buddha, another being Krishna, happened 5,000 years ago, another named Ram, great enlightened being, happened 500,000 years ago on earth approximately, and also a being named Jesus Christ, who incarnated some 2,000 years ago. And even now we worship those beings. Why do we worship them? Because they represent the great mystery. Your human mind cannot comprehend those beings. I recently crossed over the border into Mexico to do gatherings there. And when you cross the border, sometimes they'll ask you for like your passport, and it has your picture. And you say, "This is me." How are you going to show them a picture of infinite light? Or convince them, Instead, this tiny little character called me, the sort of the veil that we have placed between ourselves and God. So how do you break through that veil? It's not just one veil, many veils. She was mentioning, Beth, about the feelings of separation. All those veils are feelings of separation. Me and you, me and God, me and the universe, this and that. All of those different feelings and thoughts and ideas that one could call as ignorance. Ignorance meaning you just don't know. And many people don't even know that there is a spiritual path. Thank God we have a Center for Spiritual Living. What would we do otherwise? We just talk about the weather. It's a nice day today, isn't it? You know, and just leave it at that. I love it hanging around some of the people in the group because, you know, they start talking about God. I was even over listening, you know, some of the people talk at the table, talk about Jesus and the nature of consciousness and reality. If only all conversations were about that. To keep our attention pointed towards something greater than just materiality. So in one way, that could be like a definition of a monk. A monk is someone who kind of has renounced the material world and the material goals in order to pursue realization of the divine. And so their whole life is dedicated to that. And so while people are, you know, going to the movies at night, watching different dramas and so on and so forth, you know, the monk stays in his cave or in his monastery and is praying to God, I want to know you. I want to feel you. I want to experience you. Praying for that day when they can return, or their beloved can return to them. Day and night, the monk thinks about that. So you can imagine such a being shooting to the stars. Their path is so swift. You know, I consider that as like a definition. I'm a self-proclaimed monk. Did you know that? Oops. You know, because in India they call it a wandering sadhu. Have you heard the term sadhu? Sadhu is someone who their primary goal in life is to discover spirit. So they wander about in India. They wear orange clothes. Orange means renunciation, renounce the world. They just go from place to place and they do their meditations, and oftentimes they're healers. So they might share with you little herbs or medicines to help you heal. And they're quite magical. So those are sadhus. You go to India, you'll see them. Some of them are fake sadhus. They just want alms. But so, in this case, I would be considered as an American sadhu. But you can see, if I put it on a flyer, come see the sadhu. Like, sadhu, I never heard that word before. That's not a very good marketing tool. So, well, wandering monk kind of sounds intriguing. He has no home. Where does he lay his head? And so the beauty of that path is you really don't get attached to any location or person. And so it's kind of like free of the attachments to the world. You know, once we get a house and we lived in it for 20 years, it's like, oh, I love my house. I can't live without it. You know, very, very attached. If I get a big 401k or 403b, if you're a teacher, then you've got a big retirement. This is my retirement. And you hold on to that thing every day, afraid, am I going to have enough? Am I going to have enough? So many people live like that. Every single day, worrying about that. It's always, even if it's not on the conscious mind, it's in the back of the mind. Am I going to have enough? Like, that's a very material consciousness. That's very, like, if everything is indeed the one divine light, then absolutely you should have complete trust, whether you have money or no money, house or no house. It doesn't really matter to you anymore. You're living somewhere else. You're not living in this world. You may be functioning in the world, but your consciousness is somewhere else. You're free of lack. You don't need to pray to God, please give me more money. You are infinite abundance as it is. Infinite abundance means you have money, you don't have money. It just doesn't matter. Your consciousness is unbound and free, unchained. And not only that, But when you share spiritual teachings in that unbound consciousness, it's not about reading books and say, Jesus said that, Jesus said this, Jesus did this. You know what I mean? This is a scripture that says this. It's about actually embodying the teachings themselves. So you're glowing in the radiance of Christ. Who cares about the history of the person that lived 2,000 years ago? Really? There's so many debates. Scholars spend so much time trying to figure out what Jesus really meant and what he really did. So you memorize the whole Bible. That's like dust. The Bible one day turns into dust anyway. But your soul is eternal. You living in infinite light. You don't need to know anything. Books and information at some point become kind of like by the wayside. I am what I am. I think Popeye said that. Didn't he? I am what I am. So, and then do you remember what Wimpy said in that movie? Robin Williams played in that movie. He sang this song, everything is food, everything is food. So Wimpy is like, so Popeye represents the I am, and Wimpy represents food consciousness. I am a body, so therefore I'm afraid. Will I have enough food? Will I have enough money? It's always, am I going to get enough? Am I safe? What happened to trust in the infinite? So, kind of a profound, it just occurred to me that that's what that movie was about. Maybe they didn't mean it, but that's what I would take out of it. So then, there's a question of, well, how do you get to that state beyond fear, worry, and anxiety? How do you reach there? You should be asking that. We should all be asking that. And if you're in my case, I'm impatient. How do I get there quick? If you're impatient. And sometimes impatience can actually be a good thing. Because then you're excited to get to God. And you're passionate, you're excited every day. You can't wait. I want to be with my beloved. That's a good thing, actually. So how do you get there? Well, I learned many years ago when I first started getting on the spiritual path that the thing that uplifted me the most and really transformed my consciousness was just simply associating with those beings who had already gone beyond into these higher states of consciousness. I learned that just being with them, even in the silence, they rubbed off on me. Do you see what I mean? Their consciousness rubbed off on mine. Did anyone ever go visit Baba Haridas at Mount Madonna, right outside of Santa Cruz? Kind of more northern California. Baba Haridas was one of the first great saints that I met, a great yogi. He ran a retreat center up in a place called Mount Madonna. And he had been silent for 40 years. At age 20, his master said, now it's time for you to let go of speaking and just be in silence. So he said, yes, of course, Guruji, I will do it. And in that moment, he never spoke another word and ended up setting up this incredible retreat center where thousands, tens of thousands of people, even to today, even though he's actually passed on by now, come to that retreat center and practice yoga and meditation and really strive on their spiritual path. This happened around him, and he was silent. He didn't say any words. I don't know what I would do with myself if I couldn't speak. He did it. And I would go there and just sit right in front of him and just feel the energy and presence. And it would take me deeper and deeper into my meditations. And each time I did that, I hung out with such a being. It stayed a little bit longer. A little bit longer. I felt more and more meditative and peaceful. And then someone asked me, Brian, when do you meditate? I said, well, my mind is always in meditation. at one point, it clicked on permanently, sent my mind into this space that never turned off. Walking around, it may appear that sometimes I'm stoned. Not like I take a lot of drugs or something, but it's a sort of natural high. And then life is way easier. It's way easier to detach from things because you're living in such a beautiful space. What do you need? You have yourself. You don't need to chase after anything. So now all I have is a little Prius, Toyota Prius with some stuff in the car. And even that, I think like maybe a third of the belongings in my car I don't even use. I need to pare down. they say in India there's a proverb, you can't strip a naked man. If you don't have anything, what can a thief steal? I don't need an alarm. There's nothing to steal. There's nothing to worry about. I have my inner being. You know why I often wear the gold? Because it represents the sunlit path, the path of happiness. Yeah? The consciousness of bliss constantly flowing through you. You walk through life and things don't get you down. It's just, I was talking to someone recently about my old depression. I used to be depressed for years. I didn't really know. There was always an underlying low-grade depression. And then at some point, I don't know, just a few years ago, maybe 10 years ago, 8 or something, it clicked in where the depression fell away, and I felt a certain level of happiness I had never felt before, and I went, wow, I was feeling depressed all the time, and I didn't even know it. You know, people say, oh, how are you doing today? Oh, I'm fine. Fine doesn't cut it. You need to live in the bliss realms, where it's so strong that tears are running down your face. The joy of life is so tremendous that when you wake up in the morning, you're like, I can't wait for life. Could you imagine? Instead of, I have to do this. Oh, it's Monday. I have to go here and do that. So that's the sunlit path of inner radiance. And wherever you go, sunlight is like leaving a trail of sunlight. So I just want to conclude by mentioning that sometimes it's really helpful to go into more of an immersion of the energy. That's why I hold the gathering afterwards. Because if the energy kind of really clicks into you, it'll carry you, and it'll increase your momentum on your spiritual path. And the key is to keep kind of doing the spiritual practices day by day, keeping the momentum up. That's so crucial because people can get down by the world in a second, especially with what's happening now. Like, it's not so easy. Spirituality is even more important than ever. So I would love to see you at the gathering afterwards. And we called it Awakening Higher States of Consciousness. This is a beautiful term. And I will share more of the practices. You already know some of them. We chanted the mantra for the Holy Spirit, which is Ruka Dakucha, a beautiful mantra you can chant. But just so many others, and you never know what you'll click into and what you'll feel. So I wish you all many blessings on your spiritual journey. And namaste. Namaste.